All right, I decided to do a video for today's lesson, mainly because I think it'll be really good and important for you to be able to pause and go at your own pace. Obviously, any questions that you have, feel free to come up and follow along. You will get credit for taking the in-class notes, so if you were to submit a blank document with no notes, you would have points taken off of this next round of the assignment. So just a heads up. Today we are going to be officially writing our thesis statement. A lot of you guys have already crafted your edited lesson learned. Now today is the lesson where we add in a strong verb and we add in the information of the story. So starting off, when we're writing a thesis statement, I just like to remind you guys that it is a roadmap. It gives you the direction of where you're going, gives the breakdown of your topics, and it really just coordinates the whole rest of the essay. So remember, it is a breakdown of topics, and a guide for the paper. Since students are no longer explicitly stating literary or plot elements in the thesis statement, they must instead create new categories for discussion to help them or determine the order of their body paragraphs. So for example, in semester 1, when we were writing topic sentences, we would go through and we were selecting things out of the plot elements or the literary elements. Now we're instead finding two aspects of the topic, and that will help determine, as we talked about last week, the order of your body paragraphs. So just a reminder, we had topic number 1, which will become body 1. And then we had topic number 2, which becomes body number 2. Oops, a little typo there. Sorry, guys. Okay, so just a reminder, whatever is listed first in your thesis, that's what you are then proving in body 1. Whatever's listed second, that's what you'll prove in body 2. So we have William Golding exposes the depravity of human nature throughout the novel Lord of the Flies by revealing humanity's destructive inclination towards violence, a trait that eventually leads to the loss of innocence. So I have my topic 1. Humanity's destructive inclination towards violence. And then I have my second one, which is the loss of all innocence. Okay. Notice here I have a couple strong verbs. I have exposes, revealing, and leads. So just a note, and this is a reminder from the other day, I don't have any linking verbs. So if you end up having one, make sure you edit it out. We want to make sure we're in active voice instead of passive voice. The next section just reminds you, I would not be able to keep repeating the following language throughout my paper. Instead, I would need to brainstorm different ways of finding alternate ways in expressing myself. See the examples below. So for example, I had depravity of human nature, and in my body paragraphs, I would need to reword. So this little arrow is just letting you know, hey, I changed up, I'm giving you other ways to say the same thing. So for example, I could say sinful nature of humans, an innate evil within humanity, or a moral brokenness found within people. Notice the different words here. We have humans, humanity, and people. We have sinful, evil, and moral brokenness. All of these words mean the same thing, but what it does is it allows us to diversify our writing, so you don't sound like you're saying the same thing over and over and over. Let's look at the second example. I have destructive inclination towards violence, which in the thesis, I have right up here, destructive inclination towards violence. So as I were to begin writing my body paragraphs, I would need to remind myself, hey, you have to be able to reword this in a new way. So I could say a desire to inflict pain on others, a capacity to harm others, or an innate ability to become violent. So the first word that I have that's similar is pain, harm, and violent. These are the negative aspects of my reworded phrases. Then I have desire, capacity, and ability. And then I have a couple different verbs, inflict and become and harm. So as you look at these, you'll kind of see a pattern. Like, this is why we use a thesaurus. This is why we do all of our Membeam quizzes and Membeam studies, is to diversify your language, to make it be more broad and a little bit more diverse as you move throughout your paper. Last example, we have leads to a loss of innocence. Let me change the color. So I have this here, leads to a loss of innocence, and I had it up here in my thesis. So when I was in my body paragraphs, I could instead say breakdown of moral purity, brokenness of the human condition, realization of humanity's sinful nature. This is something that you are going to want to come back to when you get to body paragraph 1. So I like to give you an idea of where we're headed. You don't need to do this today, but you can start to brainstorm other words that can help diversify your language from your thesis. Just a reminder, my topic number 1 for the thesis was humanity's destructive inclination towards violence, and I hope to discuss it in body paragraph 1. On the other hand, what color did I mark? I have my number 2, which is the loss of all innocence, and I hope to discuss it in my body paragraph 2. Notice I use the word hope. If a student's research leads them down a different path, or they cannot find support on their chosen aspect of the thesis, students need to redraft, rewrite, and revise this thesis. So once again, sometimes the research will lead you down a different path. Sometimes you cannot find support on the aspects you originally wrote. And remember, we said this on the very first day. There is nothing wrong with rewriting and redrafting. That's the whole point of the writing process. Now, students may look at their lesson learned. Remember, this was on the other worksheet from Friday or Thursday, depending what class period you're in. And you want to make sure that you have marked an obvious number 1 and number 2 in the box on your other document. Just a quick reminder, this is what that document looked like. And in this box, I should be able to highlight a little number 1 and a little number 2. Let's say that this is your writing of the sentence, and it ends right here. So you need to go through and mark this on your own if you haven't done so already. If at this point you realize you don't have 2 topics, just a reminder to please make sure that you add in or edit before stepping on to this next stage of the writing process. Okay? Finally, students will insert the name of an author, the novel, and utilize the use of a strong action verb to create a formal thesis in the sentence below. Please always double check Chinua Achebe's spelling of his name. Your computer or keyboard will oftentimes autocorrect his spelling. So I'm putting it here for reference. And then don't forget that whenever you mention things fall apart, or if you're in my freshman class, a separate piece, you would need to make sure that you have italics in your novel title. Then we have utilizing the use of a strong action verb. I already went over some of those in mine. I had exposes, revealing, and leads. Those are my strong action verbs, but I give you a nice little list down here at the bottom, so I just wanted to go over that really quick. Strong action verbs: exposes, proves, illustrates. Found a little typo. Let's go ahead and white that out on your paper. Sorry about that. So we have demonstrates, reveals, exemplifies, articulates, conveys, elaborates, defines, delineates, and facilitates. Notice that this has a positive connotation, the word illustrates, whereas exposes maybe suggests that, hey, something has been wrong, and here's how it's a negative. Okay, there's plenty more of verbs. If you need a different one, please make sure you come and have a discussion with me. But if you see a verb here that works for you, you can come back up to this box and write your thesis statement here. This does need to be completed. So maybe you want to make a little note to yourself, fill out, and I would do that before watching the next step in the video. So this would be a great place to pause, write your thesis, including your lesson learned, your author novel, and the action verb. So I guess you should, just in case, remind yourself, obviously the lesson learned can get plugged in anywhere where you want to place it. Okay, so you're taking whatever you had in this document right here, and you're adding it using a strong action verb with the necessary information listed on this document. Remember, if you would like to do split screen and notability, you can swipe your finger. I believe it can be on the left or right side of your iPad. You can hold down the document from the other day, and then you can successfully switch between the two documents and look at them at the same time. The next part we've already went over, so go ahead and just draw a little squiggly here. We've already gone over this. We talked about the difference between our blue highlights, our green ones for our paraphrases, and then what orange is. This is a repeat. We went over this on day 1. So you can come back and review this if you would like, but if you were present in class for that lesson, you won't need to go back and reread it till maybe later if you were to forget. This is our lesson for the digital note cards. So we're kind of shifting gears once you write your thesis. And it says, after annotating and highlighting the text, students will need to start to find and keep track of the most important points of each research article. Students will be creating note cards for each source following the requirements listed below. As we went over the other day, we went over this, I think, on our first lesson. You will have 5 different sources total by the end of the project. So you don't need it right now. We're not quite there yet. You've been in the process of finding your first few. Each source will need to have a minimum of 5 research note cards. Notice research is the word I use on this. That means literally ideas from the research. Additionally, students will need to have 1 digital citation note card. And the way that the digital citation note card means is it's the complete MLA formatted citation. And I'll show you an example. We'll be going over this and I'll be helping you learn how to do this the best way. But this is not just the in-text citation. This will actually be included in your works cited at the end of the essay. So the digital note card does not count towards your 5. So for example, for source 1, you would need 5 research note cards and 1 digital citation note card for a total of 6. You will have 25 research note cards for the entire paper and 5 citation cards for a total of 30 that you will be graded on. Digital note cards will be made in Notability, and I have a sample I'll go over at the bottom. There are also 5 research note cards, as we already mentioned, but I am specifically asking that 3 must be paraphrased and 2 can be direct quotes. So you need to make sure that, remember, that you had the blue ones, which were direct quotes, and the green ones, which were paraphrases when you were doing your annotations for the sources. On each note card, you must include what note card number it is. So for source 1, you could have source note card number 1, number 2, number 3, number 4. And then you need to clearly identify which topic it supports. You can write that at the top and type it in our little note card that we'll draw in Notability. You need to make sure it's one or the other. I don't mind if you have 1 or 2 of both, but that starts to get confusing, so try to limit yourself. Then you will put whether it is a direct quote. I think we marked that in blue. I guess I should make this one the same also. I realized that might have been confusing. And then remember that green is our paraphrase. Okay? This is coming from your annotations. Then you will need the in-text citation, which I'll go over an example, but this is just the author last name and the page number with the period on the outside, and then the full title of the journal article. If it's an article, you'll put it in quote marks. I don't think any of the resources I found are not articles, so I'm pretty sure it'll be standard for all of the sources. Okay? We're going to go ahead and pause here. So just draw a line. This is a place to pause and go down to the bottom of the document. We'll come right back to number 4. Here is the sample note card. I tell you that this is my first note card and that it supports topic number 1. I did decide that it was a direct quote. For all of you people who like to color coordinate, remember we were marking for blue, we were marking direct quotes blue. I have my quote marks because it's a direct quote. I have the author name of the article. And I have the page number. Okay. This is an example of a research note card. And remember, you need 5 for source number 1. So you would have to draw 5 of these cards. You can just draw a little box and then type clearly within. The only other note I have, and I'm going to put this in green so that way we can remember, if it's a paraphrase, there are no quote marks. You do not need any quote marks on a card if it's a paraphrase. And scroll back up to where we drew our little line. We'll go ahead and continue with number 4. It says for each source used, students need 1 digital source card, which I just told you we would go over in a second. And that would have the complete citation of each academic research source. I give you examples of what scholarly journal resources look like because the majority of the sources in the folder are from a journal. Due to the nature of our Schoology website, students are not required to copy and paste the entire URL from the browser. So in the full citation, it does ask for the URL. Instead, go ahead and just put this specific one I give you, just because it's not as long and it won't mess up the formatting of your full citation. So you can copy and paste this. I believe you can click on it, copy it, and you can paste it in whenever you need to provide a URL. Just make sure that little text button has been clicked in your toolbar for Notability. All of the information provided is from Purdue OWL. If you go to their website and then click on MLA, it gives you all sorts of samples, not only of the formatting of the paper, but citations as well. Another really good resource, which we will go over later in the project, is the Whittier Christian Paper Guide, which is also housed in the course resource folder. So you have two things that I highly recommend you using if you have questions on MLA format. And I'll just be honest with you guys, it takes a long time to get the hang of things down when it comes to a citation formatting system. So don't feel discouraged. This is something that you will continue to work on well into college, just because it's something that's very tedious and detail-oriented. So, for example, first, if it's in a scholarly journal and it's in exclusively an online format, this is the version you can use. Now, it's hard to tell whether it's in print or only digital, so I'm fine with you using either of these citations. I'll just go over really briefly what's included. First, we have the author last name, then we have a comma, then we have the first name, and then we have a period. The citations have to be exact. So you need to remember, you need to do exactly what's in this, or it won't get credit as an accurate citation. We have 2 sets of quote marks around the journal article title, and notice the period inside the quote marks. Note the words that are not capitalized, typically conjunctions, everything else, and a preposition, everything else would be capitalized. Then you have the name of the journal, and it needs to be in italics. Remember that a journal holds multiple things within it. That's how we know we have to italicize it. So I'm just going to highlight that yellow just so you're aware. Now here's the key one. There's a comma. They typically tell you what the volume is and the number of the issue, and it's your responsibility to remember period, comma, period. This is the number of the journal issue, and then we have a comma right at the end. It's okay that it's on the next line. Notice that you have an indent. I can show you how to do that if you need my help. Then you have the publishing year. You have another comma, and this is where we're going to insert our Schoology URL. If we were using databases, that's the URL you would use. After you put a period, and then you have the access date. So anytime you find an article and you save it to your computer or your iPad, you would make sure that you have marked it as having an access date. So what I like to do is just at the top of my page, write whatever date it is when I access it. You end the whole entire citation with a period. Note, if it's a journal that is in print, which means hard copy, they just ask you to include the page numbers that you use. That's really the only difference between these two examples, okay? This one simply would mean no hard copy. And if you're not sure, go ahead and just do this one, because it never hurts to include the page numbers of the part you used, okay? I would like you on your own to go ahead and read through these 4 different categories. We have credibility, accuracy, reasonableness, and support. I want you to mark 5 things that you feel like it would be important for you to start to look for these in your research sources. Notice that the chart is called Criteria for Academic Resources. They are not academic or scholarly if they don't have these 4 things. So I want you to mark down 5 things you learn. You can highlight them or write your own handwritten notes. And I'm going to check to make sure that you've marked a couple things. This is my citation for the URL, so if you would like to visit the website I got this from, that's also a great resource for you guys. The only other thing I'm going to go over is the two quick little notes. One, I want you to start to think about how you're going to use transition phrases in your paper. These would be great in body 1 or body 2, and some of you might even implement one into your thesis. There's a bigger list of transition phrases. These ones particularly serve well for a thesis. And then we'll go over a couple more that work also really well in body 1 and body 2. So if you can, think about using one of these if it works within your thesis that you just drafted. Last but not least, I come up with some ideas of other words that you could use that kind of mean the same thing. I tried to hit each topic that you guys chose from as a group this year, and hopefully that serves to help you guys as you begin to form your thoughts and continue to revise and rewrite your thesis. That brings us to the end of the lesson. Please make sure that when you submit this document, all the necessary parts are filled out. And then you can use this as a reference when you start making your research note cards in a separate document on Notability.